Kardec Radio Facebook page. This is Brian Foster. We're here live streaming on Sunday night, 6 p.m. on Eastern Time. It's 8 p.m. real time where I am coming live to you, and we are all time zones from this, all around the world. I hope everyone is here on Kardec Radio. You can also listen to me live on Kardec Radio. You can get that app by going to the Play Store or the App Store there and download Kardec, Kardec Radio. And it's a free app. You have Kardec Radio programs, Spiritism programs, 24 hours a day. We're getting more and more listeners. It's wonderful. So please, if you need to be inspired or rest, like sometimes I do, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I just want to think a bit and relax, I listen to Kardec Radio. So tonight we are talking about the gospel according to Spiritism. And we're looking at chapter 1, which is entitled, I have not come to destroy the law. But first, Spiritism started by the codifier of Spiritism, Allan Kardec. I have his picture up right next to me. Wonderful book. I recommend everyone to, when you're interested in Spiritism, please look at the Spirit's book first. That will help you. Some people find that a bit tough going. I have other books on my site, nwspiritism.com. I have Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. I have Explore Your Destiny. I have the 7 Tenets of Spiritism, which is more of my personal story. And then I have all about heaven and the different levels of heaven and spirits and how the future of Earth will be as told by different mediums. Spiritism, that's my series of 3 books, Heaven and Below. But let's start on the gospel according to Spiritism. Let me bring that up because that is, to me, after the Spirit's book, I thought it was one of the most helpful books I had because I grew up, of course, typical, I was Episcopalian, and I read the Bible, but a lot of things in the Bible were mysterious to me. And the gospel according to Spiritism is just a wonderful explanation because some things seem strange, some things seem cruel or different because, Jesus was talking in a lot of parables and stories, and he couldn't come out with definite logic because, as Spiritism tells us, the time and culture wasn't ready for it, right? We are told over and over again in Spiritist literature that the spirit world talks to us so that we can understand. They don't give us concepts that will just go right over our head. And that's what they did during Moses' time and the time of Jesus and the time of Allan Kardec, which is the third revelation, where they said, okay, this is what we can tell you. And even in many of the books later by Chico Xavier and G. Val Owen, I read passages as well where they say, well, we can't really tell you that yet. And they're also not going to tell us scientific things we're finding in the future because that's really up to us to find. So let's talk about, I have not come to destroy the law. Now, this is what in Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 and 18. Think not that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or tittle shall no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Now, in the gospel according to Spiritism, what Allan Kardec tells us is there are 2 distinct parts to the Mosaic law: the law of God as promulgated on Mount Sinai, and then the civil or disciplinary law decreed by Moses. The first, which is the 10 Commandments, is invariable, and then it's appropriate. Then the customary disciplinary law decreed by Moses is appropriate to the customs and character of the people at the time, and it's supposed to modify itself with time. But the 10 Commandments you cannot mutate them. They are there. So let's go through the 10 Commandments. So number 1 is, I am thy Lord, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So that that is telling us there is a God. That's what Spiritism tells us. There is a God. There are not multiple gods. There's not like the pagans and all that. What was considered gods before were probably spirits talking to mediums, and people misunderstood. Number 2, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. And again, you read that and you think that here in our modern culture, where people say, oh, this and that, and I think, well, is that a big deal? Well, believe me, when I read spiritist literature, it's not really allowed at all. And in fact, I have read parts within Jiva Owen where first it's important to understand that words have meaning and action in the spirit world, and that's what they're trying to tell us. There was a section in the Reverend Jiva Owen book where a woman was surprised by a spirit. She was in the umbral, and she said like a curse. Oh, I curse you, or something like that. She took the Lord's name in vain. And then when she found out that she didn't know who that was, thought it was someone attacking her instead of someone that was trying to help her, she had to go find that person and apologize, because that meant a lot in the spirit world. And therefore, these things are not to be taken lightly. Another one is where a spirit talked to this newly arrived person from the earth, from the physical life. And he said, well, I don't know where I am. And he said, well, you're in heaven, but I know you don't really believe you are right now, but I'm not going to allow you to say mean. This guy was a very, very smart, basically a good person, but he did not believe in the spirit world, which I can understand. He was not ready for that. And he says, but, and the high spirit said, no, whatever you do, be polite to the spirits that help you. So this is not something that, we should think, well, in our culture, we can say all these swear words and all these stuff. No, get out of that habit. It will, believe me, it will serve you well when you go into one of the levels of heaven. Just get out of that habit now. Number 3, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And even in Spiritism tells us they really enforce and they want you to take time off. There's work in heaven, and it's important work, but they also, and you'll see this even in No Solar, the first book by Andre Louise, is you've worked really hard, you should take some time off. So in the work that you do is very fulfilling. Number 4, honor thy father and thy mother. Of course, that kind of goes with everything, that you honor people. Even though you may have a mother and father that wasn't the best, they still were your mother and father. Try to understand where they are on the scale of spiritual maturity. You probably volunteered. Yeah, they probably volunteered for this task and having that mother and father. So still, they did you a great pleasure, a great service. Number 5, thou shalt not kill. Again, that is something that absolutely certain in Spiritism. Number 6, thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, here when we have a lot freer morals and stuff, and things like that, people say, well, is that terrible? And what you are doing, if you are committing adultery and you are not open about it, you're not telling. So I'm not sure about this. Other people have other interpretations. To me, that means if you are doing something bad to your partner and not telling them. Now, I'm sure there are things like open marriages and other ones like that where each person knows. And that I'm not so sure about, to be honest. I think that is between you and your partner. If you are open and honest, then I don't see the problem with that. Now, I could be wrong. That's my interpretation. But I think that what they're saying is to take advantage of your partner, to lie to them, And again, that's something that we're told not to do in Spiritism, not to lie and be dishonest. Number 7, thou shalt not steal. Again, that is absolutely reasonable. Number 8, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Now, this is something we see all the time now. Now we think, well, what are you talking about? Well, what I'm saying is all this political machinations that are going on in our culture now, with one side accusing the other side, and there's all of this that is not factual, that is blown out of proportion. I think this is really against this 8th commandment, thou shalt not bear a false witness against thy neighbor, because thy neighbor is everyone. As far as Spiritism is, we're all humans, we're all here. Don't say things that aren't true about other people. And that's that seems to be the most popular thing on news programs out there right now. And therefore, I don't blame people for filtering those out completely. And I think they're doing something that is not good for them and not good for journalism in the long run for anyone. I think people should get back to trying to be objective, not so subjective. I know there's always a degree of subjectiveness into here, but I think people need to step back and be polite and try to find the common ground with each other. Number 9, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Again, that is, and then number 10 is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant. So those are all things which is all part of envy and selfishness. And that is, again, even in the Spirit's book, they go, what's the, the worst, attribute that stops us from everything else? And it's pride. It's selfishness, right? You're selfish, you're prideful, and that everything else flows from that. Jealousy, materialism, being miserly, all that flows from your own sense of self-importance, and that you want what you need. Now, the spirit world recognizes that feeling of hoarding, of wanting things, of being aggressive and violent to get what you needed to have, that was probably pretty important when you were a primitive spirit. But in this planet of atonement, this is our time to take these emotions and feelings, which were granted, probably very needed for you to survive out there in the plains, but now it's not. And now it's time for us to get rid of that. And that's why you'll see, the more you see, and if you read the Old Testament and you juxtapose it against the New Testament, the Old Testament has many cruel things in it, right? You'll go to that city and kill everybody except that person. And it's but again, you have to remember that this messages from the spirits to the people were very directive, right? These people were very immature, and they had to be given directives and exactly what they needed to do. So let's carry on with, and that's kind of my commentary of what Allan Kardec wrote so far in this. Now, what else did Allan Kardec wrote? So Allan Kardec wrote that Jesus did not come to destroy the law, that is to say, God's law. He came to fulfill and develop it, to show its real meaning, and to adapt it to the degree of man's advancement at that time. And that's why we find within the law the principle of our duty to God and our fellow men to be the base of his doctrine. Regarding the laws devised by Moses, we find that, on the contrary, he modified them both in form and substance, while constantly combating the abuses of exterior practices and false interpretations. Allan Kardec wrote that Jesus was unable to make the people go through a more radical reform than that of reducing the law to the order of love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. He added that this is all the law and the prophets. And by the words, when he wrote, by the words, heaven and earth will not pass till everything be fulfilled, even to the last jot. What we're being told in the Gospel according to Spiritism is Jesus was to say it was necessary for God's law to be completely implemented in practice over all the earth in its pureness, with all its amplifications and consequences. In effect, what use would have been to promulgate the law if it were only to benefit one nation or only a few men? Mankind, being sons and daughters of God, is without distinction and so subject to the same solicitude. So that makes total sense in relation to what we know about Spiritism, is that Jesus said, no, you're going to have to adopt within the bottom of your heart this law of love and loving your neighbor. And Spiritism, what does Spiritism say? If you want to narrow us down to the one sentence, what Spiritism is, it's the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And when Jesus said, it has to be fulfilled even to the last jot, what have we told about when we become, where we are a planet of atonement? How do we become a planet of regeneration? Well, the majority of us, not all of us, in order to start, the majority of us have to adopt the tenets of Spiritism. That doesn't mean we have to be Spiritists. And Spiritism say in the future, the different religions will adopt, the basic tenets: reincarnation, karma, etc. So Christ is telling us all the way in the New Testament that we've got to do this if you want to really make earth the paradise that it should be. And the paradise is, we will have people loving each other. We will get along. We won't have want. Things will be much better. There won't be war, a lot less envy, hate, everything. And people will be working together. It will be wonderful, but we have to become loving. So what Allan Kardec said is he came to show the pathway to this kingdom of how it's going to be reconciled with God's divine law. And he talked about things in implied terms. So what does he mean by that? So he talked a lot of things with hidden meanings. And that's why the New Testament to me was, and of course, when I was younger, I was just really a concrete thinker. and this is why the Gospel according to Spiritism has been such a good book for me. And he knew that, and what Allan Kardec wrote is, in order for people to able to understand the hidden meaning of his words, it was necessary for new ideas and knowledge to mature. So bringing the indispensable key, as these things could not appear before the human spirit has achieved a certain degree of maturity. And science still had to play an important part in the emergence and development of these ideas. Therefore, it was necessary to give time for science to progress. So Spiritism again tells us that science is going to prove many of the things that Spiritism as laid out, that there is an invisible world, that there are spirits, that the earth and our minds continually push out information which is unique, and all these things will one day be verified. Right now, we don't have that. Right now, you can say, you can still be very, skeptical and say, well, it's not proven. And I always tell people, yes, you're right. It's not proven. It's up to you to prove it. It's up to you. And Spiritism tells us we should not believe in Spiritism because I or someone else told you. You believe it because of what you have seen yourself. And that's what I do. I believe, and I found Spiritism because of what I went through myself. Everyone has to build that foundation as to their own. And of course, as Allan Kardec says, right, things that appeared supernatural at that time really are not, right? Spiritism tells us there are no miracles. So there's things we don't understand. And Allan Kardec goes on to say that the law of the Old Testament was personified in Moses, right? You always think of that guy. Let me bring up a picture. You always think of that that person who was a very strong-willed, probably absolutely needed to be with the unruly, newly freed Jews that were, had been slaves for generations, and they were not used to thinking on their own, and they needed someone who was directive. And therefore, Moses had to be, just very stern. But then as the New Testament came, then it was personified by Christ. People could look at and read the New Testament or hear the New Testament as it was after Jesus, and then being told about Jesus, and he was there to show, okay, this is kind of what you want to be like. But it's interesting is that Spiritism, which is the third revelation, it's personified by no one, right? It doesn't have Moses or Jesus. Allan Kardec says it represents teaching given not by man, but by spirits who are the voices of heaven to all parts of the world through the cooperation of innumerable intermediaries. In a matter of speaking, it is the collective work formed by all the spirits who bring enlightenment to all mankind by offering the means of understanding their world and the destiny that awaits each individual on their return to the spirit world. Now, Spiritism says we have not come to destroy the Christian law, but to carry it out. It teaches nothing contrary to what was taught by Christ. Rather, it develops it. It explains it in a manner that can be understood by all and completes that which had been previously known only in its allegoric form. Spiritism has come to the predicted time to fulfill what Christ announced and to prepare for the achievement of future things. As Allan Kardec is writing, it is then the work of Christ who, as he also announced, presides over the regeneration which is now taking place, and which will prepare the reign of the kingdom of God here on earth. He goes on to say that we have now reached a phase upon this planet when the teaching of Christ must be completed and the intentional veil cast over some parts of these teachings lifted, a time where science must desist in its exclusive materialism, so taking into consideration the spiritual element, when religion must cease to ignore the organic and immutable law of matter, so that they may become two forces, each leaning on the other. And when Allan Kardec wrote this, and also a lot of this is directed to him, written by mediums, and then he put this in the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, as he collated this, and that, they're going to tell us things, more and more as time goes on, has come to pass. And even, mediums and, right, even during Allan Kardec's lifetime or soon after, we had Leon Denis give us many books written, inspired by spirits for him. The wonderful books. Look him up, Leon and then Denis. You'll find a lot of his books on PDF. Then you had Reverend G. Val Owen in England in the early 20th century. In the mid 20th century and almost up to the 21st, you had Chico Xavier, Yvonne Pereira. You still have Divaldo Franco giving us information from the spirit world. So one of the things that I think a lot of people resist, as far as people who are really good Christians, is they hold on to the idea that the Old and New Testaments are the Word of God and they're not meant to ever be changed. Well, there's truth to that. And Spiritism tells us that, as we just said, the 10 Commandments are not meant to be mutated. And the spirits say that the messages of love and understanding and fraternity in the New Testament are forever. But there are some things in the New Testament that were given to the people at the time that they could understand. If Jesus went too much and one side and said everyone should be, no matter what, and everyone should love each other, no matter if they're different from the group, right? Which is, homosexuality should be okay. You shouldn't, You shouldn't discriminate, and those things which Spiritism tells us now that we shouldn't, right? But in the Spirit's book, it says marriage is between two spirits, and that a spirit can come as a man or a woman. That was the 1850s, which was pretty daring, very, very daring in the 1850s. Probably one of the reasons why the Catholic Church burned their books. But he couldn't say that. And if they had said that, no, it would have just been completely discarded. So you have to take these things and understand that the spirit world couldn't just, completely pull the rug out and say, no, everything you thought before is wrong. I mean, Socrates came to Greece and tried to give them, many of the same types of ideas that Jesus came 400 years later. And Socrates, he was also killed. The powers in Athens didn't like the fact that he said, might is right. Well, no, it's not. But they didn't like him saying that you shouldn't do bad things just because you have the power, which Athens was doing at the time. And so they killed him. They didn't want him talking to people and making life hard for them. Well, that just shows you how it's not easy to change the culture for a whole country or a whole world. And yet, think of the effect of Socrates. Think of the effect of Christ, who came to earth. One person, non-violent, has really affected the entire world. Now, many people say, well, look at all the terrible things that religion has done. Yes, I'm not going to dispute that. But that is men and women who are corruptible took this and used it for themselves, just like government. Some people have all this faith in government. Well, no. If you want to know who's killed the most people in the world, it's probably governments. Religion's a close second. I absolutely grant you that. But you look at, the Soviet Union, you look at the communist China, how many millions, the fascists, how many millions of people they killed. Tens of millions in China, tens of millions in the Soviet Union. It's horrible. So it's not religion, it's not government's the answer. What I always tell people, it's each individual is the answer of becoming a better person. And that's what Spiritism is trying to tell us. They're trying to tell us that for every action, there is a reaction. They're trying to tell us that karma is real. Imagine if everyone woke up and, tomorrow and said, oh, karma is real, and everything I do that's not very good here is going to come right back at me. I better think of what I'm doing. Imagine the revolution that would be. And of course, that would be wonderful. But this is what Spiritism is trying to tell us. So, the other thing Allan Kardec was saying is that, Moses was the spirit whom God sent on a mission to make known his presence, not only to the Hebrews, but to all the pagan world. And that what Allan Kardec said is that the Jews were God's instrument to enable him to manifest through Moses and the prophet. And the vicissitudes suffered by these people were meant to attract their attention and so help disclose the existence of the divinity. And God's commandments, as revealed through Moses, contain the essence of the most comprehensive Christian morality. However, he said, the biblical commentaries and annotations restrict their meaning, because if they had been put in action in all their pureness, they would not have been understood. Nevertheless, these 10 Commandments have become a brilliant frontispiece and a beacon designed to light up the pathway which humanity must follow. Allan Kardec is what I was saying before. He said the morality taught by Moses was appropriate to the state of advancement of the people he proposed to regenerate. These people, who were semi-barbaric with respect to the perfecting of the soul, would not understood that God could be worshipped by other means than Holocaust, nor that it is necessary to forgive one's enemies. From the materialistic, scientific, and artistic points of view, their intelligence was remarkable, but they were morally backward and would never have been converted by a holy spiritual religion. Therefore, it was necessary that they be offered a semi-materialistic form of religion as is represented in the Hebrew faith. The Holocaust spoke to their senses at the same time that the idea of God touched their spirits. So, what is Allan Kardec telling us? He's telling us what we've been told in many spirit writings, is that the spirits write to us at our level, and that, think of it, you had this tribe of Jews that were locked in slavery and had no cohesion amongst themselves. And you think, you think of, why did God make them wander for 30 years? And I think that my idea, this is just me, is he really wanted a whole generation gone. And he wanted, before they landed and settled in Israel, is they wanted that whole old generation gone, and wanted a generation that had known freedom and fighting for freedom to take place before they started setting down roots. And that's, you'll see that all the time, is when they say, because look, Spiritism tells us they're not just each one of us has our own plan, but all cultures, countries, faiths, companies, everything have their own arc to them and their own trials and tribulations. And therefore, just like we had the Dark Ages, right? The Middle Ages. The Jews had to go through this for them to become rooted into their own freedom, into their own discipline, not have discipline imposed about them from like their master or whatever, like that. And before they were ready to till their ground of what they owned. The Romans brought the world many wonderful things, but then they used that to steal money from people, to enslave people. And then, as the Spirit Emmanuel said in the book On the Way to the Light, he says, the spirit world really wanted Rome to be that shining city on the hill and bring this discipline to the world. Instead, they brought subjugation, and therefore they had to say, okay, no, everyone's got to get back to the land and learn what it is to, be on your own, not take advantage of people, and work hard. Well, that's how this, the Spiritism sends us in these cycles. Look what happened in World War I and World War II. The Western civilization, through colonization, subjugated horrible things. It's good things too. I'm not going to, there's always good and bad in everything, but subjugated whole countries and people. And look what happened to them. It was arranged for them to practically destroy themselves in World War I and World War II. And as Emmanuel wrote, that Europe will never be a power again. Some other power will come on. I think that was meant to be United States. But that will show you. I think the same thing will happen to other countries that we think, are going to be powerful. But the fact that they are so morally corrupt, that will not be good for them in the long run. Something will happen that will not help them. Now, many people say, well, the United States isn't this paragon of virtue. And I say, yes, you're right. But everything's in relativity. We are compared to most countries. And so so are many other countries too. And they're, democratic and they believe in human rights. But therefore, the countries that believe in that will be helped over time. To us, in our short lives and looking at decades or centuries, it may not appear to be, but it will happen. So Allan Kardec, let me get back on this chapter. So Allan Kardec writes that Spiritism is the lever which God is using to enable humanity to advance. The time has come in which moral ideas must be developed to bring about the progress determined by God. They will follow the same route as that taken by the ideas of liberty. Do not think, however, that these developments will be effected without a fight, is what Allan Kardec writes. No, in order to reach maturity, these ideas will need discussion and conflict so that they may attract the attention of the masses. Once this has been achieved, the beauty and sanctity of this morality will touch all spirits, who will in turn embrace a science which will give them the key to a future life and open the doors to eternal happiness. So, and we're seeing that. And we're seeing that as people learn, and they say, no, it's not right to take advantage of other people. It's not right to pollute the earth. It's not right to be cruel to animals. The world is getting to be a better place. I know many people say, no, it's still horrible. People are, hate each other. They're yelling at each other. All granted, but it's still a better place. There's not slavery throughout the land. People don't kill each other at the drop of a hat. There still happens, yes, but it's not as much as it used to. We are trying to clean things up. People are trying to not take advantage of animals like they did before. It's still there, but it's just, you have to look at the very long run. And that's what, and you also have to, the other thing you have to remember is this. When you see people today, these people are just in one life out of many. So every time someone's in their life says, no, I need to be a better person, and I need to, take care of my environment better. I need to be more empathetic and loving and charitable. I need to be honest in my dealings. Every time you have one of these persons do that, remember that person then, when they die, isn't gone. The person will be born again. And then you have by one, it's like the grains of a sand on the beach. One by one, these people will populate the earth. And that's what Spiritism tells us, is that the people who are morally backwards, it's going to be harder and harder for them to be born on this earth as we begin this cycle to become a planet of regeneration. The people who have learned through life after life will be back many, many lives. I don't know how long it will take to become a planet of regeneration, but they will. So everyone, the spirit world is patient, but they know that the numbers will not lie. It's the statistics. Each human that changes their life and changes their character and personality on earth will be born again. To add one more person who embraces the good. And so, and as Allan Kardec said, once we get past that 50% mark of people who really embrace the tenets of Spiritism, then the earth will truly be on its way to become a planet of regeneration. So, here is what I want to come. This is what Fenelon said. And then Allan Kardec quotes it in his book, The Gospel According to Spiritism. This is what Fenelon said, the spirit Fenelon. Once in his undying charity, God permitted man to see the truth pierce the darkness. That day was the advent of Christ. After that living light was gone, the darkness returned. Having been given the alternatives of truth or obscurity, the world once again lost itself. Then, similar to the prophets of the Old Testament, the spirits began to speak and finally gave warning that the world is trembling on its very foundations and thunder will resound. Remain steady. Spiritism is of a divine order because it is based upon the actual laws of nature, and you may be certain that everything of a divine nature has a great and useful objective. Your world was losing itself yet again because science, developed at the cost of all that is moral, was only inducing you to material well-being, resulting in benefit for the spirit of darkness. 18 centuries of blood and martyrs, and still Christ's reign has not yet come. Christians, return to the teacher who wishes to save you. It is easy for those who believe and who love. Love fills one with indescribable happiness. Yes, my children, the world is slacking, as the good spirits have repeatedly warned. Bend with the wind that announces the storm so that you are not thrown down. That is to say, prepare yourselves so not as to be like the foolish virgins who were taken by surprise at the arrival of their husbands. This revolution which prepare itself is more moral than material. The great spirits, who are divine messengers, instill faith amongst you, so that all who are enlightened and zealous workers may make their humble voices heard. Seeing that all humanity are like grains of sand, without which there would be no mountains. Thus the words, we are small, lack significance. To each his mission, to each his work. Does not the ant build his republic, and other imperceptible animals raise continents? The new crusade has begun. Apostles, not of war, but of universal peace. Modern St. Bernards look ahead and march forward. The law of the world is a law of progress. And that was written, inspired by Fenelon in Poitiers in 1861. So, again, just as Fenelon said, humanity are like the grains of sand. So we have to look at us as this great chessboard. A piece comes off, and that same piece comes on at the proper time and place. Nothing is lost. We are all immortal. We are all, it's just amazing that the spirit world has thought all this out. There's just nothing more amazing than this. And therefore, when you think of this, this is very important to understand the long arc of not just your life, but everyone around you, their life. And then think about the arc of, countries and companies, and everything has the arc. Everything is measured, and everything is planned out for what will happen in the future for organizations as well as us as individuals. So therefore, the advancement will come. And as Allan Kardec wrote, when God says something's going to happen, it's going to happen. But the timing is a lot up to us. We will be continually being guided to follow, right, the 10 Commandments, to follow the tenets of Spiritism. But until we really take that to heart, and more, the majority of us take that to heart, then we won't really accelerate that path to a planet of regeneration. So, if you would like to learn more about heaven, the spirit world, I suggest you read my series of 3 books, Heaven and Below. The second book is Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and the third book is How Spirits Guide Us. I will put links to those books in the bottom when I upload this to YouTube and BitChute. And then please share this video, comment on it, share it to other Facebook sites if you would like, to help spread the word that Jesus loves us. The spirits are all around us. What you have always felt in your heart, that you are not just this carbon-based thing running around waiting to be decomposed and put back into the earth. You are more than that. You are an immortal spirit who is on this planet for you to reform and alter your personality and character, so one day you will become a pure spirit. And the way to do that is to read and study Spiritism. Look at the Spirits book, read the Spirits book. If you'd like to, read my book, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, How We Are Guided by Spirits, to understand the spirit world, the organization, what is awaiting for you, how they determine our progress. I've also written a book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism, which it takes as its structure a poem by Henri Louis, 24 stanzas, very short, right? It's things like you have to have industrious patience. I explore what Andre means by that, what the spirit world meant by that statement, and then how to achieve it by different advice from different spirits in books like Joanna de Angelis and Devaldo Frankel's books. She talks about a lot of these things. They bring a lot of her quotes in from her books into my book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism. Again, all the links are below, and there also you can find all my books and other links to spiritist centers in the United States in my blog, nwspiritism.com. I try to put a lot of information. You go to meetings up there on the top navigation bar, and you'll find links to where by the United States Spiritist Federation, they have links to different spiritist centers in cities. Now, granted, most of them right now are on the East Coast, there's some on the West Coast, there's some in between. I think Dallas and other big cities. Not a lot. So if you are somewhere that does not have a Spiritist center, there's a lot of people I talk to, then please start one. That's what we did. My wife and I did when we were there, and start one. Put the notice up. Talk to people if if they like, and just help what you can. That's how everything started, by some people making the connection and making the effort to talk to people about Spiritism. I've talked to people in Louisiana, North Carolina, who've started their own Spiritist center. I've sent them books. So again, if you'd like, and then, have them come to this YouTube channel, have them come to the other Spiritist YouTube channels and learn what you can. You're not alone. There may be few of us, but we will, I think almost everyone I talk to, especially like, the Spiritist centers, when I talk to Vanessa Anzalone, she just helps anyone that comes in her Spiritist center, which is Northern Virginia, close to Washington, D.C. Always loves people. They do all their meetings in English. Again, if you're in that area, please look her up. They're wonderful meetings. So I want to thank everyone for coming for us today. And then one last thing I want to, if you're interested in Spiritism and it's hard for you to find people to talk to, Sergio has done a great site. He has created a site called spiritismstudy.org, which you can go to. You can scroll down and you can actually make a appointment with myself or other people to, we'll call you. An email will be sent. This is how it works. An email will be sent to me saying, I'm so-and-so. I'd like to meet with you at, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. And I'll say back, okay, this is 3 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll see what time zone it is for you. And would you like to talk by like Skype or WhatsApp? Everyone uses those. And there's no hassle. We're not selling you anything. We're just talking about stuff and make it very, if you want to go through, what book do you want to read? What level do you want to be at? And we'll talk. And right now, and then most of the people that I've talked to through spiritismstudy.org, we're not formally making appointments. They just call me when they want. We talk. I help them. So it's all wonderful. And so I hope this helps reach you and gives you an understanding. Let me be perfectly clear in summary, is that Spiritism tells you the answers to the questions you've had since high school, since you were thinking above your own self. Is, why am I here? Why do bad things happen to me? Why do I have to go through this? What is my place in the universe? Well, Spiritism tells you that with pretty good certainty, is that we are immortal souls. We are here. Bad things will happen to us because we've done bad things in the past. Good things will happen to us because we've done good things in the past. Other lessons will be taught us because we need to expand our boundaries. No one dies. When someone who's wonderful has a terrible terminal illness, they, oh, that poor person. Well, that person probably signed up for that trial. And that person probably was thankful at the end that they were able to leave this physical life and go back to the wonderful life in heaven, in the spirit world. It gives you a whole new perspective on everything. So anyway, I want to say, God bless everyone and good night. God bless.